Okay, today's daf yomi is the daf yomi for Shabbos, and the daf yomi is Nedarim, Chaf Hey, Nedarim 25. We're going to start on the bottom of 24b, 2 lines from the bottom. So the Gemara said that a case where a person makes a vow, this is like the number of people that went up from Egypt, which is 600,000 men. That's a nidre avai. That's an exaggerated vow, and it's not relevant. So Gemara says, "I'm Ravina," and means say it's annulled without even going to a chasam. So I'm Ravina Ravashi v'dilma hi gavra kina deshum shani chaza. Maybe this person, all he did was see a bunch of ants. Va'asikuhun shma oy mitzrayim. And he called these ants the people who went up from Egypt. Maybe that's all what's going on. Maybe he just saw ants. Mishapir mishtabai. And maybe he's really swearing properly. Maybe he's not. Maybe he doesn't have in mind the number of people left Egypt. Maybe he just has in mind ants. The Gemara says on the top of Chaf Vav and Halef, Amalai, no. So Rashi responds to Ravina. You don't get to control what you think these words mean. When you take an oath, you're taking the oath what you think we think it means. And if you say you swore like the number of those who went up from Egypt, we don't think you're referring to ants. We think you're referring to people. And that's why it's called a nidre avai, because you can't say, oh, I meant this, when most commonly people take it to mean something else. So the Gemara says, you mean to say that people don't typically swear based upon what they think themselves the words mean, but rather what other people think. But we learned in the Brisa, when you force someone to take an oath, you say to him, you must know, so when you force somebody to take an oath in the court, you say to him, you're not taking an oath based upon what you think in your own mind, but rather what we think and what the court thinks. Now, aren't we trying to exclude? And if you would take an oath, like aren't we trying to exclude a case where he paid somebody with wooden chips, which he called zuzim, and he says, yeah, I gave you zuzim, because I call those wooden chips zuzim. Aren't we trying to exclude such a case? I mean, the kamar al datenu, and from the fact that we have to specify in that case that you're swearing by our intent, so don't we see that in general, a person would be able to take an oath based upon what they think as opposed to what everybody else thinks? The Gemara says, no. The Gemara says, no. It's not what we're trying to exclude. When we do that, we're not trying to exclude a person who has in mind one thing while everybody else has in mind another thing. It's not what we're trying to exclude. We're trying to exclude Lafuke Mikanya de Rava. We're trying to exclude the case of what we're calling the Kanya de Rava, basically the stick of Rava, and so that's what we're trying to exclude. What's the case of the Kanya de Rava? It's not Rava's stick, but it's a case that happened. That and by the way, we'll see from the story that this was a stick that wasn't Rava's, but he was the dayan at the time, so that's why we attribute it to him. Say that there was a person who was holding that his friend he was making a claim against his friend for money. Also coming to Rava. So the guy goes to court. Rava says to the borrower, Zil Parle, pay him. He says, I already paid him. Rava says to him, if you already paid him, Zil Ishtabela de Parase. Take an oath that you paid him. So then what did he do? He brought a stick that was hollow, and he stuck some money in it. And he's leaning on this stick. And he came to the court, and Amarle Umilva, and then the borrower says to the lender, You hold my stick. Nasav Sefer Torah. He took the Torah, Vishtaba, and he said, he took an oath to Pare. And he said, I paid it. Everything that I had is in your hands. So basically, it wasn't the case that we were concerned about where you had in mind ants and we have in mind people, but he actually had literally given him the money. The guy didn't know it because he was in a stick. Well, this other guy was so upset. He was so angry that he got upset. He broke the stick. And he threw it onto the ground. And so we see from here that was found out that he had sworn truthfully. So that's what we're trying to exclude. We try to exclude when we make the person when we clarify what he's taking notes about. We're not trying to exclude that you might have had one thing in mind when we had another thing in mind. You're trying to say, don't do any tricks where you gave it to us without us realizing it, like the stick of Rava. So the Gemara says, and you really think that a person can't take an oath? So you think a person can't take an oath on his own intent, but he has to take it based upon what we think. Matanya, we have the following brisa. We find by Moses, when Moses made the Jewish people take an oath in the plains of Moab, he said to them, he said, you should be aware that I'm not making you take an oath I'm not making you take an oath by your own intent. I'm making you take an oath by my intent and by the intent of God, as it says, so not by you alone are you taking an oath. So the Gemara says, let's clarify, what's Moshe Rabbeinu saying? What's Moses saying to Israel? And why does he mean when he says that you're not taking an oath based on your intent? Isn't Moses saying the following? Isn't Moses saying to them, maybe you're going to take a new word and you'll say that you're swearing according to your understanding of what this new word is. And because of this, he's saying this is based upon what I think the word means, not what you think the word means. And we see from here, and isn't Moses trying to exclude the possibility, what we're concerned about? Isn't Moshe coming to negate the possibility that they'll call idolatry by the name of God? And so therefore they're intending to say, when they say we are accepting God, they really mean idolatry. And we see from here that a person can swear, generally speaking, according to what he thinks it is, and not according to what we think. And therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu has to specifically exclude it. And so therefore, going back to the case of the Ohen Mitzrayim, even if he says, if I didn't see, I'll take an oath that I never saw, like those who went up from Egypt. Why don't we say that he refers to an ant, a school of ants? The Gemara says, no. Well, avodus kochavim ikri Elohim. No, that really is a legitimate understanding of idolatry, because sometimes idolatry is called Eloha, as it states to Bakol Elohim Mitzrayim, like all the gods of Egypt. So when you say I swear to accept God, we have to make sure that we're accepting the real God and not the idolatrous God. So the Gemara says, well, why did Moshe Rabbeinu have to swear, but that they're going to say the words in accordance with Hashem's understanding and his understanding? Why don't he say, I make you take an oath that you're going to accept all the commandments? That should be enough. Gemara says, Mashma mitzvahs amount. No, mitzvahs could have implied all the commandments of the king, not necessarily the commandments of God. So the Gemara says, but still, why doesn't he take an oath that they're going to fill? Hold on. Why doesn't he make them take an oath that they're going to fulfill kol mitzvos, all the mitzvos, not just the commandments of the king who's ruling at the time, but all the mitzvos of the Torah? And the Gemara says no, because that could have implied mashma mitzvah tzitzis. As we saw that Rowie gave a shir this week on the mitzvah of the talis, and it was the mitzvah of tzitzis is equal to all of the mitzvahs of the Torah. That's all it could have implied. The Amar Marash Shkua mitzvah tzitzis connected kol mitzvah shebet Torah. The mitzvah of tzitzis is equivalent to all the mitzvahs of the Torah. The Gemara says, "V'lashri yehon demiskaimun Torah." Why doesn't he make them take an oath to fulfill the Torah? That should have been sufficient. The Gemara explains, Mashma Torah achas. The Bnei Yisrael could have had in mind that they're only going to fulfill the written Torah, not necessarily the oral Torah. Last week, told them the Kaiman Torah. So why didn't they fulfill the Torahs, the Torah Shabbat and the Torah Shabbat, the written Torah and the oral Torah? The Gemara says, no, that could have implied Mashma Torah's Minchas, Torah's Chatas, and Torah's Osham. That could have implied the Torah of the Mincha, the Chatas, and the Osham, but not necessarily the whole Torah. Last week, told them the Kaiman Torah mitzvahs. Why didn't Moshe say that you take an oath that you're going to fulfill all the Torah and all the mitzvahs? Gemara says, Torah's mashma, Torah's mincha, mitzvah's mashma, mitzvah's mincha. Again, the Torahs would imply just the Torah of the mincha, the offerings, and the mitzvahs could imply the mitzvahs of the king. Gemara says, well, last week talking about Torah kula. So why didn't he say make them take an oath to fulfill the whole Torah? Torah kula mashmas of its chum. That could imply idolatry. They could have thought in their minds that they're only swearing not to worship idolatry, but not all the other mitzvahs. The Tanya chamura avodas kechavim. Idolatry is so strict, and whoever rejects idolatry, it's as though you accept the whole Torah. So the Gemara says, well, why didn't Moshe make them take an oath? Which you told them it's kaim on avodas kechavim Torah kula, or inami sheish mitzvahs? Why didn't he make them take an oath to fulfill the whole Torah and they won't violate idolatry, or that to fulfill all 613 commandments? So the Gemara says, Moshe Rabbeinu Moshe Rabbeinu make them take an oath on his mind and on God's intent, and as a result of this, he fulfilled the mitzvahs because he didn't want to specify, he didn't want to get the lawyers involved and go into all the detail. Anyway, we see from here that this refers to the 613 commandments. And our son Shia texted me right before Shabbos because he's in Israel and he was doing the daf, and he said this is the only place. There's one of two places in Shas where it's explicit about 613 commandments, and this is one of those two places where it mentions it. The other place is in the end of Makos, where Simwai says refers to the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah. We learned in the Mishnah that if somebody takes an oath and he says that this loaf of bread will be prohibited upon me if I didn't see like a snake. If I saw a snake, kikoros beisavad, it was the size of an olive press. This is called a nidre avai, an exaggerated vow, and it's not binding. The Gemara says below, is it really possible that you can't have such a big snake that's the size of a olive press? In fact, we're seeing lately in the news, we saw a couple of stories in Florida of a python that's so big it's swallowing alligators whole. And recently we saw a case in the news where a python swallowed an entire human being whole. So we have such snakes that are so big, right? And they are the size of an olive press. So why can't it be possible? There was once a snake, the snake was in the years of King Shabur. They threw at the snake 13 large bales of straw, and the snake swallowed it. So we see that they have giant snakes. So the Gemara says, I'm a Shmuel b'taraf. No, Shmuel says, our Mishnah is not talking about that he saw such a large snake the size of an olive press, but that's possible. We're talking about that he saw a snake that was filled with ridges, like an olive press, that has a lot of ridges on the back of it. That's what an olive press has. I'll take the Gemara's word for it. I have seen olive presses, but I don't remember the ridges on it. I'll take the Gemara's words. The Gemara says, Kul nach shi mitrav tarfi. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. If you're saying that you haven't seen a snake with ridges, we saw snakes that are similar to other snakes. All the snakes are made with ridges. The Gemara says, Agabo tarif kabir. No, we saw the snake that has the ridges on its back. That's what we're referring to. The Gemara says, V'lisnei tarif. So why does he have to talk about an olive press? Why doesn't he just say, he's talking about it that I didn't see a snake with the ridges. The Gemara says, Milsa gavorcha kamashman. The Mishnah is teaching us something on the way. It's teaching us the Korah space Sabad Gabo Tarif. He's saying that if you want to buy an olive press, the assumption is that its back is going to have ridges on it. And if it doesn't have ridges on it, it's not an olive press. Well, it might have to mean, well, why do we care? If you're doing business and you're buying an olive press, it has to have ridges. If you want to buy a beam of an olive press, better make sure that the beam has ridges on its back, or else you can nullify the sale. Okay, so says the Mishnah on the top of 25b. The Mishnah says as follows. Says the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, hold on. Nidre shkagos. This is the third of the four types of vows that are automatically null and void. What's a nidre shkago? What's an accidental vow? Imachalti, you say, I'll take an oath if I ate, or im shasisi if I drank. And then after the fact, afterwards he remembers that he ate or drank. Or he says shani ochel shani so. So he says that I will eat or that I will drink, and then after the fact, shachach va'achal v'shasa. After the fact, he forgot, he accidentally ate or drank. It's called an accidental vow, and you don't even need to go to the chacham to know it. Or if he says, Amar kona mishti nesri, he says, my wife can't have any benefit from me because because she stole my wallet, she struck my son, and then afterwards, no deshlo hikto, no deshlo ganva. Afterwards, you find out, well, she didn't really strike anything, she didn't really steal anything. So that's also null and void. Third case is Ra'u san ochon te'inim, that he saw a group of people eating figs. Amar harei aleichem karban. He says, you're prohibited to me, basically. V'nimtzeu aviv va'achiv. And then he found, when he shows up to it, that one of the people was his father or his brother. Va'yo imahem acher. And there were other people who weren't his relatives. And if he would have known that his father and brother were there, he never would have made the vow. That's called the nidre shkaga. It's an accidental vow and it's nullified. Meishamei omer mutarin. Meishamei says that the father and the brother are permitted. Mashe imayim, and all the other people who are with them are going to be asurim, are prohibited. Why? Because the father and the brother are permitted, and everybody that's with them are prohibited. Because with respect to the other people, it wasn't a mistake. It was only a mistake with respect to the father and the brother. Beisil says both are permitted, both the father and the brother, and also all the other people. Because once we knocked out part of the vow, we knocked out the whole vow. So it says the Brisa. Hashem shenidre shkagos mutarin, kach shvuos shkagos mutaros. So the Brisa says, just like the vows, the accidental vows are permitted, also the shavuos shagagos are mutaros. Just like if you make a vow accidentally, it's permitted, like the ones in our Mishnah. Also, if you take an oath that you're not going to eat a loaf of bread, and if you ate one yesterday, and then when you made the oath, you thought you didn't eat it, but now you remember you ate it, then you're not prohibited. We're going to say that's an accidental oath. The Gemara says, what's considered this accidental oath? Kigon Rav Kahana and Rav Asi. So the Gemara tells us an incident that Rav Kahana and Rav Asi were arguing. What did Rav think about a specific law? Hadin Amar Shvu Asa Dahachi Amar Rav. This one says, I swear that Rav said this. Hadin Amar Shvu Asa Dahachi Amar Rav. And this one says, I swear that Rav said this. That each and every one was swearing according to what they thought was correct. And so therefore, that's not going to, so each one, if they were wrong, it's considered an accidental oath, and they're not going to be prohibited to eat the fruit. Then we saw in our Mishnah that it said if you saw them eating and then you discovered when you prohibited the figs upon yourself, when you prohibited those who are eating figs, you're not going to get any benefit from them. And then you showed up and you saw one of them was your father and your brother. So we learned in the Mishnah, Tanan Hasa, we learned in the Mishnah, Samach Vav, Posun B'Shabbosos V'Yom Tovim, that you're allowed, that we're talking about a person who made an oath that he's not going to eat meat for 30 days, and he forgot that on Shabbos it's a mitzvah to eat meat. So we say to him, as to annul his vow, we say, if you would have known that it's a mitzvah to eat meat on Shabbos, would you have made this vow? If he says yes, then we annul the vow. At first they said, though, what became permitted? Shabbos and Yom Tov. All the other days are prohibited. Rabbi Akiva, though we made Neder Shuter Mitzasa Huter Kulo. So Rabbi Akiva came along and told like Beisil, if you have a vow that part of it is permitted, the entire vow becomes permitted. Amarava, Dekuya, Alma Ko Echad, Amar Ilasi Odea Shab Abba Benechma Yisi Omer Kucham Asurim, Chut Miaba, Dekuan Asurim Avim Mutter. Everybody says, and in the circumstance where you said, if I would have known that my father was amongst you, I would have said all of you are prohibited except for my father. Everybody would have said all the other people are prohibited and my father is permitted. When is there a dispute between Mishama and Mitzilo? Talking about a case where he says, if I had known after he knows that his father and his brother were amongst them, he said, if I had known that my father was amongst you, I would have said, such and such a person is prohibited and my father is permitted. So since he says, now if I had known that my father was amongst you, he would have said such and such a person, he would have said it specifically, such and such a person, and he would have taken my father out of the vow. And so therefore his father is not part of the vow, he shouldn't be prohibited. So that's where they have the argument. We'll discuss this more on, God willing, on Sunday, but we'll repeat this stuff on Shabbos Kodesh. Everybody should have a good Shabbos. If anyone has any questions,